afternoon, boys and girls. I am Mrs. Harris from Manor School, and these are the kindergarten boys and girls in Mrs. Trimble's class. And I thought it would be nice to read some stories to you today. I'd like to remind you that it is always a good thing to have stories read to you. And so I hope your mommies and dads are reading stories to you, maybe your grandmoms, at home. I'd like to share with you this afternoon a story about what Mary Jo shared. And during this time of the year, we think of sharing because you're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving Day next week, and perhaps you'll be sharing your food with your family members and maybe with some little boys and girls or a family in your community that doesn't have much to eat. And so I selected the story, What Mary Jo Shared, so that you can get some idea of what sharing is all about. Mary Jo never shared anything at school. She was too shy to stand before the other children and tell about anything. She didn't think they would listen to her. Almost every day her teacher, Miss Willett, would say, "And Mary Jo, what do you have to share with us this morning?" Mary Jo always shook her head and looked at the floor. "Why don't you ever share anything?" her friend Laurie said. "I will someday," said Mary Jo. "I just don't want to yet." Mary Jo really did want to share, but she was afraid to try. Almost every evening when he came home, Mary Jo's father asked, "Did you share something at school today, Mary Jo?" "Not yet," she always answered. One morning it was raining hard. "I'll share my new umbrella," thought Mary Jo as soon as she woke up and saw the rain pouring down the window. She could hardly wait. She hurried with breakfast and hurried with dressing. Finally, it was time to put on her new pink raincoat and take her own pink umbrella to school. This was the first umbrella she had ever owned. Before, when it rained, she would walk under her sister's umbrella. She had picked this one out all by herself in the store. On the handle was a chain and a tag. Mary Jo had written her name, the name of the school, and room 101 on the tag herself. She hurried up the hill from the car, holding her umbrella against the heavy rain. At the door, she shook her umbrella and then carried it in, tripping along the hall. When she got to the door of her room, she saw a whole row of umbrellas drying in the hall. They were all sizes and colors, and some of the other umbrellas even had tags on them like Mary Jo's. "Almost everybody in my room has an umbrella too," thought Mary Jo. "I guess that isn't a good thing to share after all." So when Miss Willett said, "And Mary Jo, do you have something to share with us this morning?" Mary Jo shook her head and just looked at the floor. The next week, Mary Jo and her brother caught a grasshopper and put it in a jar with holes punched on top so it could breathe. "I'll share the grasshopper," thought Mary Jo. She wrapped the jar carefully in a cloth and put it in a paper bag. That way, even if she dropped the bag, the jar wouldn't break. So she carried it carefully with her under one arm and her lunchbox in the other hand. "Jimmy's got 6 grasshoppers in a jar," said Laurie. "He caught all of them himself." Mary Jo thought about her one grasshopper and how her brother had helped her catch it. "I guess I won't share my grasshopper after all," thought Mary Jo. So when Miss Willett said, "And Mary Jo, do you have anything to share with us this morning?" Mary Jo shook her head and looked at the floor. All the other children in Miss Willett's room shared things. Together, they shared letters from their aunts, or they shared their pets, their turtles, their white mice. They shared their rabbits and their kittens. They shared things they found at the beach and things that they found in the woods. Mary Jo didn't have an aunt to get letters from. She didn't have any pets. And she never found anything at the beach or in the woods that someone else hadn't already shared. But finally, Mary Jo became determined to share something that no one else had shared. It got so that she hardly could think of anything else. These are the things that the other boys and girls had shared. One night, she even dreamed that she wanted to share her new pet elephant. Well, but when she brought him to Miss Willett's room, he was too big to squeeze through the door, no matter how hard she shoved. So, in her dream, she sadly led her new pet away. What shall I share? She pondered over and over. Her father came down, and he said, "Did you share something at school today, Mary Jo?" And as usual, Mary Jo said, "Not yet." Then suddenly, Mary Jo thought of something. "Could you go to school with me tomorrow for a little while?" she asked her father. "Tomorrow?" "Yes," said her father. "I don't have a class until 11 o'clock. Mary Jo's father was a teacher in the high school. "Good," said Mary Jo. "Then you can come and hear me share something." "All right," said her father. "I'll be there. What are you going to share?" "Wait and see," said Mary Jo. As soon as Mary Jo and her father came to school the next morning, Mary Jo introduced her father to Miss Willett. Miss Willett said that they were very glad to have her father visit them. "I've got something to share today," said Mary Jo. Wonder what Mary Jo wants to share. "Fine," said Miss Willett. "There's the bell." Mary Jo's father sat by the window in one of the guest chairs while the children saluted the flag and Miss Willett took the attendance. Are you thinking about what Mary Jo is going to share? Let's think about it. Then it was sharing time. As soon as Miss Willett asked if anyone had anything to share, Mary Jo raised her hand. "Mary Jo," said Miss Willett, "you may share with us first this morning." Mary Jo stood up and walked to the front of the room. "This morning, I have brought my father to share," she said. In spite of herself, she giggled a little. This made all the children smile, and they turned to look at Mary Jo's father. He didn't mind at all. He stood and bowed his head a little in his friendly way and waited to be shared. "This is my father, Mr. William Wood. He is 36 years old and has a wife and 3 children. His youngest child is me," said Mary Jo. Jimmy raised his hand. "My father was born in Montana," said Jimmy. "Where was your father born?" "Well, my father was born in California," said Mary Jo. "He teaches English in the high school. He likes to read a lot, and he writes quite a bit too. He is a good swimmer and knows how to sail boats. He likes to go fishing and hiking." "So does my father," said Laurie. "My father builds houses," said another child. "My father travels all over the country," said another. They all wanted to share what their father did, it seemed. "Children," said Miss Willett, "it is Mary Jo who is sharing her father today. Please be a little more quiet. Before my father grew up, he was a little boy," said Mary Jo. Then her face turned hot, because that sounded sort of silly. All the children laughed, but Mary Jo went on. "Sometimes he wasn't too well behaved," said Mary Jo. "What did he do?" asked one of the boys. "Well, once he locked his brother out of the house. And once he ate all of the cake his mother was saving for an afternoon club meeting." "And now my father will say a few words." Mr. Wood smiled and made a little speech about how he had enjoyed visiting Miss Willett's class. The children clapped, and Mary Jo and her father sat down. The children clapped, and Mary Jo and her father again bowed and sat down. Mary Jo felt good. At last, she had shared something that no one else had thought of sharing. You like that story, boys and girls?
Yes.
Good. There is another class that wishes to come in and join us. Will you have Mrs. Martin come in? No. Bring them in. We're going to have another story. You may talk out. Do you? All right. They're going to come in and they're going to share the next story with us. We have another class joining us.
Me too. Mrs. Harris?
We're going to be very quiet and not talk because we're getting a picture made. Don't talk. The next story that I would like to read to you, boys and girls, is about the first Thanksgiving. Many, many years ago, some people who called themselves pilgrims left England to find a new home. Pilgrims were people who went to faraway places for religious reasons. These pilgrims wanted to have their own churches, but the King of England would not let them have their own churches. He said that the pilgrims must go to his church. "We will not stay here," said the pilgrims. "We will go to Holland, where people are free to go to their own churches." So they went to Holland. Holland is a beautiful country. It has clean cities and many flowers. It has many rivers and canals. It has walls called dikes to keep the water from covering the lowland. In the winter, when the canals freeze over, children and grown-ups skate on the ice. The pilgrims were hard workers, and they soon found work. But they were country people, and in Holland they had no land. They had to do city work. Even the children had to work, for the pilgrims were very poor. The pilgrim mothers and fathers said, "We do not want our children to work for other people all their lives in a strange city. We do not want them to run away to be soldiers or sailors. We must find a place to live where more people will come from England, so our children will lose their way, and then they will not have to worry about where they should worship." The pilgrims knew about a new land far across the ocean. It was called America, and that's where you live. Some of it belonged to England. "We will go to America," they said. "There is much land in America. We can build our own town, and we can go to our own church. Our children can be English children." The pilgrims got on a ship. It was named the Speedwell. Here is one of the ships that they got on. The Speedwell took them to England. Other pilgrims and some other English people who wanted to go to America met them in England. They were on a ship named the Mayflower. The two ships sailed off for America. The Speedwell was not strong enough for the big ocean waves. The water came through the bottom of the ship. The Speedwell had to go back to England, and the Mayflower went back too. Many of the people on the Speedwell got on the Mayflower. Soon they left England and the town of Plymouth far behind. The Mayflower had sails. These are the sails. Okay. The wind blowing on the sails made the ship go. The Mayflower sailed on and on across the ocean. The children thought they would never get to America. The ship was very crowded. There were 102 people besides the sailors on that ship. The 31 children played games on the decks. On the ship was a small boat, like a fishing boat. It was on the upper deck. Here's a ship on the big boat. Sometimes the children got in the way of the sailors. Then Captain Jones made them go down into the big cabin. They could not play there. It was too crowded. Captain Miles Standish was an army captain. He was the only soldier on the Mayflower. Captain Standish had to teach the men how to fight. When the men came up on the deck to drill, the children had to be quiet. It was fun to watch the men drill. When the drill was over, the children played soldier. The sea was very rough. Sometimes the waves washed over the decks. The weather got colder and colder, and the people had to stay in the cabin. The air in the cabin was bad. Many of the people got sick. At last, the Pilgrims could see land. They were very happy. The Mayflower sailed into Cape Cod Bay. This was in Boston. That's about 300 miles or 400 miles from where you live here. This was a place where the ocean cut into the land. The land made a curve around the ocean. The waves were not as high in the bay as on the open ocean. But the Pilgrims needed a place where the land was good for growing crops. They needed a place where there was deep water for the ship to close to the land. Captain Miles Standish had some of the men who got in the small fishing boat. They sailed along the coast looking for a good place. Here they are sailing, trying to find a place to live. After 3 trips in the small boat, the men found a harbor that was deep enough for the Mayflower. They found fields where the Indians had planted corn. There was good water for drinking. The men went back to the Mayflower with the good news. Soon after that, the ship sailed into the harbor. The people went ashore. They called the place where they landed Plymouth, after the English town of Plymouth. The Pilgrims had to live on the ship for many more days. They had to live there while the men cut down trees and built houses. The weather was cold, much colder than it was in England. There was not enough food to last through the winter. Many of the people got sick. It was a hard time for the Pilgrims. Only 1/2 of them lived until spring came. One day, an Indian came to Plymouth. His name was Samoset. He could say some English words. Samoset brought other Indians to meet the Pilgrims. He brought Massasoit, the chief of the Indians. The governor of Plymouth had Chief Massasoit agreed that the Indians and the Pilgrims would be friends and help each other. With Chief Massasoit came Squanto. Squanto had been to England with some sailors. He could talk English. Squanto lived with the Pilgrims. Squanto was a good friend. He showed the Pilgrims where to fish and how to plant corn. The fish made the soil better so that the corn could grow well. They would put a fish down in the soil and then put a kernel of corn down and cover it over. And that was to help to make the corn grow. The Indian corn was very important. The seed the Pilgrims brought from England did not grow well. They made bread out of corn. When spring came, Captain Jones said, "I must sail back to England in the Mayflower. Who would like to go with me?" Not one of the Pilgrims went back. They were brave people. "We will not go back," the Pilgrims said. "We will stay here and work hard. Someday things will be better." When fall came, things were better. This is called the fall of the year. The Pilgrims had homes. They had all the food they could eat. Governor Bradford said, "God has been good to us. We have homes and we have food. We can go to our own church. We should thank God for all these things." The people said, "Yes, we must thank God, for He has been good to us. Set a day for us to come together and thank Him. We will have a feast and invite our Indian friends." Governor Bradford set a special day of Thanksgiving. He invited the Indians. The men went hunting. They shot wild turkeys in the woods, and they shot deer. Some of the men went fishing. The women baked many good things to eat. They cooked most of the things in their big fireplaces. The men cooked the deer over the fire. The children fished. Some of them dug clams. Some of them gathered wood for the fires, and others gathered berries and nuts and plums and wild grapes. Some of the boys gathered cranberries, At last Thanksgiving Day came. The Pilgrims went to church first. They thanked God because he had been so good to them. Then they went home to the feast. And here they are at the feast. And this is what you're going to be doing next week. You're going to have a special dinner at home and have friends to come in and enjoy the Thanksgiving dinner. They called it a feast. The Indians came to the feast. There were 90 of them. Imagine, the Pilgrims and Indians sat down at a long table. The tables were out under the trees. The children and some of the Indians sat on the grass. There was enough good food for everybody. They had deer, turkeys, geese, ducks, fish, and clams. They had corn, beans, squash, pumpkins, plums, grapes, nuts, cranberries, and corn cakes. How does that sound?
Good.
Good. After dinner, they had fun. The Indians did a dance. They showed how well they could shoot with their bows and arrows. Captain Standish marched his men and boys on parade. The children ran races and played games. The boys played ball. The Indians had such a good time that they did not want to leave. They stayed for 3 days. Chief Massasoit sent some of the Indians into the woods. They came back with 5 deer. It is a long time since the Pilgrims thanked God for helping them in a new country. Their new country is now the United States of America. Americans in many states have held Thanksgiving every fall since the time of the Pilgrims. President Abraham Lincoln set a special day for Thanksgiving and said it should be held each year all over the country. Now, every year, the 4th Thursday in November is Thanksgiving Day. All over the country, people gather their families together and have a feast. They thank God for the good things of the past year. They eat turkey and they remember the brave Pilgrims and the first Thanksgiving Day. Can you tell me what you're going to do for Thanksgiving Day? Tell me.
Corn.
You're going to eat corn and good things. What are you're going to have turkey. What else are you going to do?
I think my grandma's coming down there. I want to know about my grandma.
Isn't that nice? And won't you have fun there?
Eat pumpkin pie.
You're going to have pumpkin pie. Yes.
Go up my grandma's and celebrate it.
You're going to go to your grandmom's and celebrate it. Very good. Yes.
Yeah. We have potatoes.
You're going to have potatoes. Yes.
Sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes. All right.
Let friends over.
You're going to have friends come over. And what will you do when your friends come over?
Eat turkey.
Are you going to share with them?
Yeah.
Very good. All right. What would you do for Thanksgiving? You're going to eat good food and turkey. Yes.
Corn.
All right. Well, I think that we're going to have a good Thanksgiving, aren't we? So next week, when you sit down to the table to have your Thanksgiving meal, will you remember the first Thanksgiving? And how the Pilgrims came over to this country so that they could live in freedom and do some of the things that they wanted to do?
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Boys and girls, it was